029, food. Food addiction behaviors are driven by emotional, psychological, and neurochemical deficiencies or defects and almost always require counseling or psychotherapy formulas to successfully manage them. A lot can be learned through the first half of this book, which explores the nature and science of addiction and how it functions. Food addiction bridges both the substance and behavioral addictions, bordering within both. The pleasure-pain principle, 30, 60, 90, and many of the specific drug and behavioral addiction strategies can be modified to adapt to an eating disorder strategy when used in conjunction with a behavioral health professional. A food addiction needs to be treated with the similar formulas of titration and restructuring detailed in the smoking cessation and caffeine plans. I am by no means suggesting that a food addiction is the same as these other addictions. Every addiction is uniquely complex and multi-layered within our minds, whether it is tobacco, caffeine, food, or heroin. While every addiction is as unique as every person experiencing it, there are categories, and smoking, sex, caffeine, and food addictions fall together in a hybridized category of substance behaviors. These other strategies are largely transferable and can be adapted to food, with the emphasis put upon the titration and restructuring of the behavior. By offsetting quantities, times, and places of habitual behaviors, we cause them to weaken. By slowly installing and repeating new replacement behaviors, we become habituated to them the same way we became habituated to the toxic ones. A template for food addiction. Weeks 1 to 3. Eat the same foods with the same frequencies, but reduce quantities by 1/3. For example, 1/3 less of the entree portion, 1/3 less of the vegetable, and 1/3 less on the starch. Do not put your regular quantities on your plate and rely on willpower to reduce those quantities. Discard excess amounts immediately to minimize deprivation feelings that may erode your commitment. It is recommended to make the same meal quantities and only discard the third portions after the meal is made. I know it seems like a waste, but it is better for a while to prepare the same portions you're accustomed to and discard the third to avoid subconscious sabotage of the titration. This takes much of the thinking out of the meal preparation, and that can be critical. Weeks 4 to 6. Reduce quantities again to near goal proportions. If you have a junk food issue, replace the 1/3 reduced quantity of junk food with a healthy alternative and eat it first. Week 7 and on. Reduce to goal proportions and continue to add healthier choice portions 1 week at a time until a lifestyle is created. What are goal proportions? Determine what the healthy amount and type of food intake would be if you were at your ideal weight and fitness. This is your goal proportion, and it should be very slowly and gradually worked towards. Diets do not work. They are too abrupt, and our addictive minds love extreme circumstances. The sabotaging subconscious knows we cannot go from one end of the spectrum to the other in an instant and is waiting for us to try. Gradually is the only way to modify eating habits. When I became a vegetarian, I allowed 2 portions of meat per week for a while and then 1. In about a month, I lost the taste for meat altogether, and 12 years later, I never even missed it or even thought about it. My subconscious became so conditioned, it no longer even perceives meat as a food. Similar conditioning can work for portions and healthier food choices. With trial and error and continuing to modify and customize, we can train and condition our minds to accept nearly anything as a habit or addiction. So let's condition them to have good habits and addictions. A learned habit is a learned habit. Good or bad is up to us. Chapter 031, Shopping. Compulsive addictive shopping is serious. As with any drug, it can be detrimentally expensive, cause conflict, and serious family discord. Non-addicts are convinced and typically vocal about their belief that if you truly wanted to, you could stop. It's not heroin, for God's sake, it's shopping. Easy to say and think if you're not a shopping addict. We live in a global society fueled by materialism with the temptation and promise of happiness and fulfillment if we just own more stuff. Being human is to have an innate sense of needing, desiring, and wanting for something more. The desire for money and more material gain with the illusion that owning more will give us peace, happiness, and contentment is a disease no one is exempt from. The retail and wholesale industry executives are exploiting this human weakness for their own addiction. They want to sell so they can profit and buy things too. Just like with drugs, a measure of happiness is attained when buying or acquiring something, and pretty soon the subconscious has done the math. If some is good, more is better, and excess must be truly great. Let's shop. The shopaholic can and definitely should read any and all of the drug treatises. The principles are identical and driven with the same magnitude. Dopamine and other endorphins released when shopaholics acquire what they desire are the same ones released with cocaine use, opiate use, and other narcotics, merely in lower quantities than with substances. Help. Trusted support and assistance can be highly beneficial, maybe even necessary. Addicts cannot trust themselves since their addiction is a very real presence in the mental decision-making factory. Whatever parameters are set for you, some supportive leverage to help hold you accountable will likely be needed and helpful. Needed to keep you honest and helpful because the self-control will feel less burdensome if it can feel shared. Boundaries. Reasonable but realistic limits must be set. As always, we need to temporarily overcompensate for the excessive behavior for a predetermined quantity of time. The 90+ day period is applicable because it is the mind's responsive timetable, the amount of time required to create a habit and to break one. Ideally, a 90+ day period of total abstinence could be used. Unfortunately, most behavioral addictions have very real and even necessary life features that require this formula to be mutable. Total absence from shopping is unlikely because it can have serious impacts. We need groceries and other everyday items that require our presence in stores. If total absence of retail areas is not realistic, let's set guidelines and boundaries. 1. Agree on a budget per purchase or shopping exposure. Predetermine an actual dollar amount on groceries and needed items. Receipts would need to be retained and confirmed for compliance. If compliance is not adhered to, consequences must be applied. Consequences should be upheld with a loving, non-critical attitude to minimize being perceived as punishment. If the budget is not adhered to, 3 strikes and you're out. Money and debit credit cards should be confiscated and replaced by a small cachet of prepaid money gift cards. Buy 4 $50 and 2 $25 money cards. The supported person, husband, wife, or trusted friend should maintain custody of the cards and dispense cards only when a trip to a store and specific purchases are agreed upon and a list is drawn up so there is little to no room for misinterpretation. The varying amount of cards allows some versatility for varying shopping needs. A $50 card for a grocery trip, a $25 card for a trip to pick up some limited number of items at a hardware store. Nothing for clothes or shoes or unnecessary items for a while. The benefit is as follows. 1. If the addict overspends or buys non-agreed upon items, spending can't be excessive since the card amount is limited. 2. Makes the addict much more conscious of his or her buying. It removes the convenient lack of conscious awareness during the buying episode. Some guilt and humiliation is sure to accompany this because it is hard to not be conscious of exactly why he or she has to pay with this card and have these limits. Remember, shame is a healing feeling. 3. It conditions and habituates the addict to normal shopping parameters. If repeated non-compliance occurs, total absence is required. During the total abstinence period, shopping trips can be made by a roommate, friend, or spouse, and the addict should occasionally, 1 out of 4 times, accompany them to receive exposure therapy. Being exposed to the shopping experience in a controlled and limited amount without having any power or buying opportunity is therapeutic and beneficial, though uncomfortable. The discomfort should not reach higher than a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10. If it reaches 8, 9, or 10, a break outside the store is needed. Too much stress and discomfort is counterproductive, but none is not productive at all. The shopaholic should participate in shopping planning by providing opinions on shopping lists and needs. If these conversations become conflicting or argumentative, they should be aborted and planning rules should be agreed upon and set. Once 110 days have passed with cooperation and compliance with the strategies being used, it's time to push the boundaries through to recovery. A pre-arranged amount on a money card can be arranged, and a solo trip to a shopping environment should be experimented with. A $75 shoe buying trip can be earned with cooperation and compliance. The supportive partner can provide a $100 card, drive to the store, and either wait outside or nearby, but out of sight as the addict goes in and shops and tries to stay at the $75 limit with the $100 card. Slowly, these limits are expanded to gradually work back to personal accountability of credit, debit cards, and unsupervised shopping. All exercise and experimentations can and should be reactivated if non-compliance or relapse occurs. As always, there is no way to determine or recommend the total length of time of recovery because each person may require different amounts of time to succeed. Follow the rules and let the timing establish itself. Slow progress is still progress, and there should never be an opinion of it taking too long. Solo. The above formula will work well with those who have supportive people, but what if you're alone in your recovery? Many of the same strategies must be applied and in the same ways, but you, the addict, must play the role of the enforcer. This is not recommended or advised because we cannot trust an addict with his or her recovery, right? Yet sometimes there is no choice. If you are a somewhat non-social introverted type, you may not have many or even any trusted support to rely on. It is difficult to recommend effective self-patrolling strategies without knowing the details and dynamics of someone's access to shopping and money. Left to ourselves, we can always find a way to justify around our own boundaries. More emphasis must be put on the meditation exercise because you will need to become truly self-motivated to be your own policeman. Make lists, mentally or physically, of the negative consequences of your shopping addiction and meditate lengthily upon those. Could you lose your home, car? Have you already lost things as a result of your shopping addiction? What would you own or have required in life by now if you did not overspend due to this addiction? Dream and fantasize about what you would have, could have, or should have. Focus and meditate not only on those things, but also on the debilitating and humiliating feelings of deprivation of them. Focus on the feelings of failure and self-disappointment, as this will empower your mind to strongly want to avoid those feelings the only true way you can, by not repeating the actions that led to them in the first place. Solo is hard. Cancel credit cards. Debit and credit cards are dangerous since they make you less conscious of your spending. Use cash only. Watch those dollars be spent instead of merely observing yourself, signing receipts, or typing in PIN codes. The retail and financial industries love that we can spend with little to or no conscious awareness. Limit access, close accounts, and or move excess cash deposits into a certificate of deposit, CD, or some other account that penalize withdrawals or overspending. Case conference. I had a client who overspent until he was at financial risk. He was convinced that it was smarter to use his Amex card for all of his purchases, even gas and coffee, because he got points that eventually gave him some type of reward each time he used it. Who do you think came up with the point system and who truly benefits from this? Could it be Amex? They not only get a small fee paid by the merchants who make Amex transactions, but they also get your interest fees paid to them if you carry over your balance. Bottom line, the rewards amounts were substantially less than the amounts he was paying in interest every month on his balance. The bank and credit industry is not a charitable industry. They are grotesquely irresponsible, profit-driven machines that could not care less if you lose your home due to overspending. And why should they? It's not their responsibility any more than it's McDonald's responsibility if someone nearly dies of nutritional atrophy because of his or her diet being 100% Mickey D's. They all merely provide a service, but it's not illegal to pass on these services. If it seems too good to be true, it is. Get motivated any way you can to self-regulate. Get angry at the one percenters. Be afraid of becoming destitute and helpless. Be ashamed of your self-worth and happiness being fueled by a propaganda of retail BS. Just like the addiction recovery industry loves drug addicts and flimsy dope laws, the shopping industry loves and lobbies our government for weak and vague credit card laws that enrich them and make you vulnerable. Take the power back. Expect recovery to be uncomfortable and harder than you would assume or reason it to be. The addictive subconscious will fight back. Try not to underestimate the intensity of your addictive obsessive nature as you try to best it. As it resists, you will see it for the disorder it truly is. Good luck, and every dollar you save from shopping should be saved and a portion set aside for more meaningful reward. Always wanted to buy a big screen TV? Well, now you've earned it. Always felt like making a disproportionate charitable contribution? Do it. Schedule your rewards in stages of your recovery. We must show, not tell our minds, that doing this is fulfilling and pays us well. We will need its support, so let's buy it.